Welcome back to the Cage Walk podcast with Kayla, presented by OddSmokerMMA. Tonight, I have Jason, the Destroyer Coffey, here with me tonight. I am so glad to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing all right. Um, Again, thank you for joining me. It was awesome to meet you at Island Fights a couple weeks ago, where unfortunately you didn't get the results that you wanted, but you looked great out there. And I think we all agree there might have been a little bit of an early stoppage. So
It happens.
it does, it does, it does. Um, so let's just go ahead and jump on in. Let's get into your start to MMA. I know it started with wrestling in high school, so why don't you talk about that?
Um, so I started high school in '99. I wanted to play football like every other kid, but wasn't. I guess wasn't really big enough. So my mom wanted me to. Well, she allowed me to wrestle instead. I was like, well, I'm going to do some sort of sport like that. So we started wrestling, and then did 4 years of wrestling. Um, Varsity lettered. Uh, I think it was like a 6-4 record, so I had a winning record, so that was good. Um, and then joined the Marine Corps after that, and started doing jujitsu, and then going to the Marine Corps martial arts program, which it's I wouldn't really say MMA really. It's definitely a survival fighting for sure. Um, so that was quite interesting to start learning that stuff. Pretty much self-taught. Did a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, um, and started doing kickboxing, um, and then a little bit of boxing. So uh, never never really got a lot of hands in really until recently. So that was pretty neat. After I got out of the Marine Corps, well, I did 3 pancration tournaments while I was in the Marine Corps, so everything but headshots was allowed. So basically your typical MMA bout, but you couldn't hit in the head. So obviously they didn't want us to punch each other in the face. So um, yeah, I did 3 of those, and then after I did that, I got out in 2012. So I was in from 2003 to 2012. Um, and then I kind of took a 10-year break, and that we'll call it that. Um, and then I met Larry Downs at a city council meeting, and he asked me, he's like, "Hey, you should come to my gym and train." I was like, "All right, cool, let's do it." And I was 2022, and from there I kind of asked him. I was like, "Hey, how does a guy get a fight?" And he's like, "Well, I can get you one." And I was like, "All right, cool." Well, like 45 minutes later, he's like, "Oh, hey, by the way, you're gonna fight in 2 months." I was like, what?" I was like, "All right, let's do it." Right? I guess he wanted to see if I was for real about it. I was like, I mean, I'm gonna do it. Uh, so I was like 245 pounds. I lost 30 pounds in a matter of like 2.5 months, and I totally changed my diet. I was working out like 6 hours a day, 3 hours in the morning, doing cardio, lifting, and then like 3 hours in the evening doing grappling. All sorts of training. Boxing, kicks and everything like that. So I put myself through the ringer for a good 2.5 months. So it's like the end of July, and I fought in September. So, uh, so needless to say, I trial by fire for sure. My first fight was against Chase Wolford, um, and it lasted 57 seconds in his favor. So, yeah,
That's
I
not funny.
mean,
I shouldn't laugh. I'm sorry.
yeah,
It,
I mean, it's great. I mean, honestly, it was funny. It's funny that you laugh because he was looking at me the whole time they were raising his hand, and he's like, "This dude is smiling bigger than I am, and I won the fight." He's like, what is wrong with this guy? And for me, it was just the whole experience, because I always told the guys when I was in, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna fight in the UFC, I'm gonna do this, and then of course life happened. I wasn't, my life took a different direction, and then being able to get the opportunity to fight in the island fights. I mean, they do a pretty good promotion. I had my name on a locker and, a little hand wrap bag, a bucket, and all this kind of stuff. Like they fight cards and, your walkout songs. I mean, it really feels like you're a pro fighter. You feel like you're treated like one, and so needless to say, I threw the first two punches. He got me with an overhand right pretty good, kind of dazed the crap out of me. I ended up taking him down. He got my back and put me in a rear naked choke. And I realized that I was about to get choked out. So I tapped out, and I got up with a huge smile on my face. I was like, oh my gosh, that was so awesome.
I got choked out. Woo! No.
Yeah. It's like, I had my mom was there, my wife and kids were there, and it was just like, of course, my mom's a little upset. Everybody's like, "Oh man, he lost." I was like, you know what? For me, at that point, it wasn't about winning and losing. It was about like getting back after it after
Yeah.
being out of it for so long, and that was really the start to my turnaround in mental health, really, because I spent a long time after the Marine Corps just being pretty angry and you know just being kind of a hateful person to a lot of people, especially my family, which is we'll talk about that later. um, just having that opportunity kind of really recharged my batteries for sure.
I definitely want to touch base on something that you brought up. One, I truly didn't mean to laugh at you for losing, but we joked the first time we met, so I think you understand. It
Oh yeah.
was you said it lasted 50 seconds, but in his favor. So I was
Right.
like, he's like, wait, maybe there's something I didn't know because I knew, you took that fight on 2 months, whatever, but I don't think I ever knew the result of it. So I thought some, new news was coming. So the way you said it was just hilarious. So for those who are like, I can see laugh. Look, it's okay. Me and him laugh about the same things. It's okay. So
Oh
I didn't mean it seriously.
no, no offense taken. Like me and him actually, we're good friends, and after, because I didn't know him before the fight, so we became good friends after the fight. Like he's come over to my house for Thanksgiving dinner and stuff like that, and we train together, when he's in town. And he's like, man, I'm so glad I knocked the crap out of you, because he's like, I don't know if I could have taken you on the ground.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, it was all around a really good experience, and like I said, I was, like I said, 245 pounds. Just I hadn't really worked out in, almost 10 years. There was little spats where I'd, get the workout bug, and, I'd kind of try to get into shape a little bit, but then just fell off the wagon really quick after that. Um, but that was really a start to, like, essentially turning my physical health around for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome that you found that outlet, to do that. Because I know you said at one point you were eating so much, you gained a lot of weight, and obviously you weren't happy with it. So when you had to do that weight cut and stuff and get back into it, definitely, um, you're able to do that.
Right.
Um, I do now. I want to touch base on something that you said, and I want to kind of shift gears to your military career. I know when we've spoken before, when you came home, it wasn't great. In
Mhm.
a sense of your mental health and PTSD. Um, so why don't you walk us through like when you came home, how you managed to cope with it, the best that you because I feel like for a lot of veterans when they come home they think they're coping with it. In reality, they're not.
Oh yeah, 100% correct.
So let's talk about how you were coping with it and then how you actually were able to cope with it. And I'm sure there were some family issues, so you had to rebuild that relationship there with your family. And kind of, I don't want to say get over it, because as a veteran, I'm not a veteran, but from hearing stories, being um, coming from a military family, you never truly get over it. That always sticks with you. You know, the things you see when you're stationed, when you're overseas, it never goes away. But you learn healthier ways to cope with it. So I kind of want to, talk about that, how you dealt with it in your own way, and then not the right. I feel like I always use the wrong words, but a healthy way.
Right. Yeah. So I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. My once again, my dad was all for it. He was like, "Hey man, you do what you do." I actually applied for Virginia Military Institute. Born and raised in Virginia, so I was like, man, that's like a really good, military college I wanted to go to. I visited when I was 5 years old, and and I was like, man, I really, really want to go here. I'm sorry, when I was in fifth grade, not five. Fifth grade, we took a trip up there because the Battle of Newmarket and everything. And I was like, man, I'd really like to go to this school. Well, I applied for that school, and that was the only college that I've ever applied to. And hey, life is what it is. I try to get good grades, the SAT scores, ATT scores. Um, I had letters written. It just guess wasn't enough. So I applied for like early decision. They put me on the regular decision. Didn't get that. Put on the waiting list. I didn't get that. I was like, well, I guess I'll just join the Marine Corps straight up, instead of going to college. Um, so of course my mom was kind of well, you could go to a community college. I'm like, I don't, I don't want to. I want to go. Like, I want to get out of here, and see the world, if you will. Um, so enlisted in 2003. Went to boot camp in November of '03. Um, so I wanted to do crash fire rescue. Well, obviously, needs of the Marine Corps put me in aviation ordnance instead, uh, which at the time I was a little irritated about. I was like, man, they did me wrong here, But overall, I really loved being an ordnanceman. It was probably one of it was a really super cool experience. I got two combat deployments, and then one what's called Westpac, which is the Western Pacific. We just go around basically the rim of the Pacific Ocean, and train with other countries and stuff like that, doing air to air stuff and air to ground training and stuff with them. Um, but yeah, back to my first two deployments. I was on aircraft carrier all three times. I was on the Carl Vincent the first time in '05, then the Stennis in '07, and then in 2009. Um, my first deployment, it, it was pretty interesting because I'd never been, essentially that far away from home for an extended period of time like that. Back in 2005, it was maybe emails occasionally, but we had the little pay phones in there with the little phone cards and stuff, and like we're trying to call home and like trying to talk to my girlfriend at the time, and but in that deployment we ended up losing two pilots. Um, they had a midair collision, and actually it was May 2nd. So it's just a few days ago. Was the 10-year or 20-year um, remembrance of that. Um, that was probably the toughest part. And people talk about PTSD, and they automatically assume, oh, you've been in combat, you've seen this, seen that. But you know, I put a post on Facebook about, I still remember that day on the flight deck. I remember arming up the missile, um, looking at him in the cockpit. We did the whole, like that, and smiled at each other, and he took off, and that was it. Then we did a shift change, and in the middle of the night, I found out that they had crashed. And that took a. It's still sometimes hard to talk about, but it's a lot easier to talk about now, just by being around people and with similar situations, and talking with them about it, and getting out there and being able to remember them. And a lot of people, I actually ended up getting a tattoo, and people, they look at it and they're like, "Oh man, that's a really cool tattoo," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's for two of the pilots that I lost my first deployment." And it's like their immediate reaction is like, "Oh,
Yeah.
hey," like I'm like, "Hey, bro, it's cool. Like that's why I have it, so I can talk about it." So it's right there. So and those were their call sign, Dukes and Trash. Uh, so the PTSD part of that was pretty rough. That kind of stuck with me for a long time because you just see the guy and then all of a sudden he's gone. There is no time for really mourning. Like we essentially took like one day off, and then we got right back after it again. Loading bombs and everything like that, and doing flight ups like really nothing ever happened. So not being able to properly process that, while you're on deployment, that really affects, you as a person.
Oh, I'm sure.
Um, of course, when we get back, it was like, oh yeah, that happened, and then we just kind of moved on. So I said that was probably one of the biggest issues that I had when I was in, was having to try to deal with that. Um, and then my '07 deployment was pretty cool. That one went great. We dropped, I think it was like 43 pieces of ordnance the whole time that we were over there, and it was pretty gnarly. We got dropped a bunch of bombs. Every single bomb we dropped went high order, which means it blew up with no problem. So, and you it's kind of rewarding too, because we did get feedback from some of the guys that were on the ground receiving that help from close air support. We got thank you letters from the commander and be like, hey, if it weren't for you guys, we'd probably be hemmed up right now pretty good, and that kind of stuff. And it was rewarding. It's one of those sides that a lot of people don't see. The intricacies of how everything works. Everybody thinks it just, like I said, boots on the ground, people kicking in doors and stuff, but there's a lot more to the whole dynamic of everything than just that. Um, yeah. So ended up getting out 2012 after 9 years. I just kind of had enough. I was like, it's time to move on. Do something else. Um, got 2 years as a contractor. Um, did that. Worked on F-18s, the same job that I did. So while I was in, I worked on F-18s and Hughes and Cobras for the last 3 years that I was in. That was pretty cool. I like the machine gun aspect of that one, because that wasn't on the F-18s. So we got to shoot all the machine guns. It was a Gauss 16s, the minigun, the 6-barreled one.
Yeah.
So that was pretty gnarly. I like shooting that one. Uh, yeah, that was pretty sweet.
First,
Uh,
definitely different change of speed than be, um, with the oh my gosh, words. I can't think. I'm so sorry.
yeah,
Um, moving to that part in the military would be just a different change of speed. I can imagine. You know, is that kind of when you said that you just wanted a change? Is that what you were looking for, or why were you looking for a change? Not to cut
oh,
you off. I'm sorry.
oh no, that's fine. Yeah, because I did 3 deployments with the same unit. So at the time, I was, I think, one of the longest Marines that were in that unit consecutively.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so because people usually come in for a deployment and then leave or something like that. They usually spend about 4 years and they go somewhere else to another unit, whatnot. Um, but I was like, nah, I'll just stay here. I like it here. And then got married, and then we ended up, you know, going through a divorce, and ended up going to a non-deployable unit, which was the helicopter training unit in
Okay.
Camp Pendleton, and so that was kind of one of the reasons why I changed, so I could kind of be home with my kid and all that stuff, because deployment every other year, and there's like basically 18 months of workups and deployment. So you basically half the year home for a month, gone for a month, home for a month, gone for a month, and it does kind of wear on you a little bit too. So I was like, I kind of need a change of pace too, kind of be back in the States for a little bit. And then, kind of dealt with that and then ended up getting out in 2012. Um,
Okay.
yeah, dealing with, machine guns and, rockets and stuff like that was pretty cool change of pace,
Yes.
because, yeah. Um, yeah, after I got out, I was pretty upset because I didn't want to get out, um, and it didn't it never felt right. I could never find something that would take the place of what the military gave to me, as far as like the camaraderie, the brotherhood, and just life in general. It's like we would joke around with each other, and like you can't some of the stuff that we do, you can't really do that in a civilian job because they look at you like you're insane and crazy. Like this guy, like don't hang out with that guy. Don't talk to him. You know. But you get around your guys that you were in, or even right now I got a bunch of veteran friends because to be honest with you, I really don't have very many civilian friends. So it's a very small group that tolerate vets. Really, I think.
I mean, but you got to, I mean, there's not a lot wrong with that, though. They went through the same stuff, and not that you shouldn't have civilian friends. But like
Right.
you said, like if you make a joke, they're gonna look at you crazy and be like, "What the fuck is wrong with this dude?" So
Right.
it's good that you have that support, especially with your PTSD and having the people who went through the same thing you did. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
I don't like normal civilian. I like the crazy people and the ones who can joke. Like these normal people, I look at them crazy, like, what's wrong with you? No,
Yeah. Like I'm normal. Everybody else is just weird. So
exactly. No, that's
yeah.
exactly how I view it. See, I knew we could, when we were talking at the fights, I knew we liked you, me and my husband. You
Yeah.
know? But
Um,
go ahead.
oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of going back in the whole like mental aspect of it. You
Hmm.
know, I was like I said, I was kind of angry after I got out because I didn't want to get out. I wanted to stay in. It was just not fun for me at all. Um, in that constantly you don't realize it, but while you're in the military, you constantly live in a state of chaos, whether it be like running around at your job. For me specifically, it was you would get on the flight deck and we'd grab bombs from the bomb farm behind the island, and just run around the flight deck loading all this stuff, like crazy madmen, and then launching these jets and then bringing them back, and then other ones come back and land. We download those or fix them, whatever needs to be done. So it's a constant, you know, chaos of stress. Like
Hmm.
essentially well orchestrated confusion. It's really what it boils down to. Um,
Controlled chaos.
oh yeah, it really is controlled chaos. It really is, especially working on the flight deck. I mean, looking at it at the time, I was like, this is probably the crappiest thing I've ever done in my life. It's like I hate it here on this stupid boat. Of course, now I look at it, almost 20 years later, going, I kind of miss it a little bit. It was a little fun. Just all the interesting, especially the wildlife that you'd see. We saw whales. We saw like the little phytoplankton behind the ship. It was like glowing in the dark and stuff. Like,
It's so cool.
yeah, it was actually pretty neat. Dolphins and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Um, just being out on the open ocean is it's kind of peaceful when you think about it. When you kind of just turn off everything about what's going on, you just kind of standing there looking at the ocean. You're like, man, there's not a piece of land in sight. Like I'm out here all by myself. Like
And it's calm.
yeah, it
Until the
really
next
it
day and the
is.
chaos starts again. But
Yeah, right. So going back to that, like after you get out, you're just like, okay, well now what do I do?
hmm
And After my divorce, I ended up getting remarried. Um, and, just a lot of baggage from, dealing with my divorce, um, and, getting out, not wanting to get out. It really was just, like I said, angry all the time. And so if something bad would happen, I'm like, oh, good, chaos, I just stir up the trouble, and then like if it was going good, it'd start going good. I'm like, I don't like this feeling. Like, this is not right. So
Yeah.
then subconsciously, I would pick a fight or start an argument or, find something
Stir it
to
up.
create something, create a problem,
Yeah.
and my wife is, it is not probably, she is the most patient person on earth. It's like we went through some pretty hard stuff, and everything from like bankruptcy all the way to almost filing for divorce ourselves. Um, we've been together for be 12 years now. So yeah, she put up with me for a while, and ever after we started doing marriage counseling, um, about a year and a half ago, about 8 months into that counseling, that's how long it took for me to realize, like, oh, I do have a problem. Like, there's a huge issue here, like, with the way I think, and
Mhm.
constantly wanting to start issues that don't have any reason to be started. Just dumb stuff like, I can't believe you squeeze the toothpaste from the middle of the tube, and just start something like that. That's so silly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to as an example, obviously, but you know, really diving deep into the counseling stuff. I talked about that a little bit on the last podcast I was on, and I was asked if I could go back and tell someone that's getting out of the military what would be the one thing that I would information I'd give them. Be like, hey, one word of advice. It would be seek counseling immediately. Because everybody's like, nah, I'm fine. Yeah, you think so, but I was, for 10 years after I was out, like, I was still irritated. I'm telling, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine. I know how to control it, whatever. And really, you don't. And I'm a pretty stubborn person, so it took me a little bit longer, to figure that out. And you know, really breaking through that stigma of counseling is such a bad thing. And, oh, well, I only need to go counseling if I have a problem. Well, I mean, that's not always necessarily true. I a couple of my friends were getting married, and I was like, hey, are you guys going to marriage counseling? Pre-marriage counseling. And they're like, no, we're good. And I'm like, huh, okay. You you probably should look into it for real.
Yeah.
Um, like I
I'm
said,
laughing like I've never been to marriage counseling. I probably should, but
yeah, I mean, I and this is coming from someone for over 20 years was like, oh, I don't need counseling. The counseling's for people that are weak and all this stuff. And that was like where my mindset was for such a long time. And it's really, like I said, in the stigma of dudes going to talk about their feelings is, you just don't do that. You're like, oh, I'm a guy. I don't need to talk about my feelings. I'm fine. We'll just go hang out with my buddies. I mean, hanging out with your buddies and talking about stuff is great, but like really getting down into it, like, you find somebody that's good and that you click with, and
it's gonna
and
give you the right advice.
yeah, yeah, and it
Yeah.
definitely, though, the lady that we have, she's definitely phenomenal, because she makes you think, kind of calls you out, and you're like, oh no, that's good there. She's like, but is it though? Let's kind of deal with that a little bit. Um, yeah, I definitely would suggest counseling for really anybody that's been through any sort of traumatic, childhood. Um, I had a good childhood, but there's still stuff that bothers me about it. That kind of that affects my life now. And talking and counseling, dealing with it and stuff, it's actually like helped out with that. Um, like I was made fun of as a kid. I mean, believe it or not, I was a butt of a lot of jokes pretty much the whole 12 years I was in school. So, and I think that's kind of what made me the laughy person I am, and being able to joke about stuff that people will be like, what? That's, he just made fun of you. I'm like, yeah, I don't really care. I don't care what he said. It's like, it doesn't bother me. Because I've been able to figure out how to deal with it and be like, yeah, and a lot of times people will try to put you down because they can't see themselves in that position or doing what you're doing. So they're almost slightly jealous. So
Yeah.
they take that opportunity to kind of like try to kick you down. You're like, okay, dude, you can say what you want, but I'm still going to do this. And you're just going to sit on your couch and eat bonbons and think about, oh, well, I could be something,
Yeah. I don't figure the whole counseling thing. I unfortunately have come from a traumatic childhood. I mean, some just horrific things. And when I was in the foster system, I was forced to go to counseling. And as I got older, I was like, I'm good. I'm good.
Right.
I'm good. And then when I got older, I started going on my own. I was like, shit, maybe I needed this all these years because,
Yeah,
and that's for anybody, especially, veterans and stuff. You guys go through and see these horrible things. And like you say, you don't get that chance to cope or to grieve, or it's just right back to it. So you're stuck with this and you're like
exactly.
in the middle of nowhere, or, you're around all these guys who probably are like, oh, we're fine. Then you have to act fine. And so, like you said, I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of. I think it's easier for women because we're more, for women. We're
You're more
sensitive.
emotional. We get it. Yeah.
I cried through the Notebook. Like, come on, like.
Okay. To be fair, my eyes were sweating a little bit during that movie as well. All right. The Notebook is a pretty good movie.
I just threw that one out there. I'm sure there's actually more people who've cried that than they'll admit.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for
but
real.
but I agree with so much you're saying though, and now I kind of want to, if it's okay, I want to jump course because we're talking about the counseling and getting the help. I would love to jump into your nonprofit.
Sure. So my buddy and
Unless
I,
there's nothing else you wanted to add, right?
no,
Okay. I'm
yeah,
sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off as you just started talking. I just wanted to make sure. It's just because we're talking about this, and I thought it'd be a good transition into your
yeah, for real.
nonprofit
Just
that
go
you
go
started.
with the flow, So once I met my buddy John Hills, um, oddly enough, at a gas station, and I had my Marine Corps cover just sitting in the dashboard. I don't even know why I had it in my truck. You know what I mean? Like, total boot thing to do is like put your cover in the dashboard, be like, hey, yeah, I'm a Marine. Everyone see that? Yeah. Total boot thing to do. And this was probably 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe. And so he walks in. I have a beard at this point. He's like, is that your truck out there? I was like, yeah. He's like, what are you, a boot? And like, never met this guy, right? And I was like, nah, man, I got out as a sergeant, bro. And he's like, oh, cool. And of course, I was like, I'm a Marine, I'm a Marine. Like, we started talking back and forth, standing there in line. And I was like, all right, cool. Exchange numbers, Well, I totally forgotten I talked to him. Well, he friend requested me on Facebook. And like, he and I were talking back and forth for like a whole year, you know, never like met him in person again. And, his wife friend requested mine. Like, they were kind of talking. She's like, how do you know this guy? I was like, I don't know. Like, he's from Virginia. Like, yeah. So I mean, he's from Virginia. So I was like, maybe I don't remember from like high school or anything. Like, I don't remember. And then we got to talking again. I was like, hey, why don't you just meet us at Gary's Beer Garden? Because we were having like a little get together or whatever. He was like, all right, cool. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember it now. We met at the gas station. He's like, yeah. And I was like, bro, I'm so sorry, dude. So
He
like,
knows who you are, and you're over here like, I don't know how I know you.
dude, I could not remember where I met him. It was just so funny. But yeah, so we started hanging out. Dude, I pretty much call the dude every day. Um, we just talk for a little bit. Um, but we kind of got onto the subject one day about mental health and how when he was in, it was really stressful for him and his family, like dealing with everything. And I was like, that's the same thing for me. What can we do to help veterans and first responders? Because caveat to this, first responders I think are highly overlooked for PTSD situations
Mhm.
because they see a lot more carnage than we like to think. We see a firefighter, we're like, oh yeah, he just runs in a burning building. My dad was a firefighter, my mom's a firefighter, my brother's a firefighter. So it's like I come from a whole family of firefighters. I was the only one that was the black sheep, to be honest with you. So um, yeah, so all of the stuff and the stories that I hear, just them talk about, I'm like, ooh. I was like, dang. And you got to think that's their job. They do that every day. And then police officers, obviously, the recent news in the past few years, we all kind of know what they deal with, and it's a lot.
Mhm.
So we're like, dude, we got to help vets and first responders because we definitely want to kind of bring awareness to, hey, look, this is what's going on, even though you guys don't know it. And get their families and really our organization, it's called Vet Cola. I guess I should have started off that. Veterans of Pensacola. um, we do events for veterans, first responders, and their families. So it's a way for their families to create memories, and have a good time together as a whole, and then get around people with similar experiences, um, and be able to talk and kind of be like, oh, you went through that situation. Oh, shoot, so did I. This is how I dealt with it. This is what we did. This is who I talked to, and just pass information, um, of other organizations to help out, because we can't do it all. So, and there's so many veterans organizations out there, and just to be a in, info gathering for other groups, um, is really good. Be like, oh, hey, look, we don't specifically do this. Like my buddy Jamie Wells, he does Defenders of Freedom, and he does a lot of similar things that we do, but he focuses on traumatic brain injury. So like we don't do that. He does. So we're like, oh shoot, you got to somebody with a traumatic brain injury, talk to Jamie Wells like in his group, and they'll be able to kind of help you and steer you in the right direction with that. So that's a big thing for us is working through all the issues, and I don't want to see anybody else go through the same stuff that I went through, and having their their wives and family just kind of walking on eggshells because you're irritated because you got out. And it's once you bring that subject up to another veteran and their families, they're like, oh, you're right. And I couldn't tell you how many vets I've heard to be like, yeah, I was really angry when I got out. Those are like their exact words. And I'm like, I couldn't tell you how many times I've heard that. It's insane. It's like, yeah, I was really angry. I was really angry. I'm like, yeah, bro, we all are, even if they retire.
Yeah.
They're like, I was upset. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to talk to. It's like you go from being this tight knit organization where you literally live and breathe with the dudes that you're with all the time. You spend more time with them than you actually do your family. And then now all of a sudden you get pulled away from them literally overnight. I left the Marine Corps in 2 weeks.
Oh
It's
wow.
like 1 minute I was there, 2 weeks later, I was getting my EAS paperwork, honorably discharged, and I was gone. And now I'm having to deal with not being with that group of people anymore. Thankfully, I was around that a little bit after I got out, but I feel like that kind of hurt me because I still wanted to be in, so it kind of made it worse because I knew I wasn't. So that was I ended up having to go away from that and do something else, and then we ended up that was in Southern California and San Diego, and then we moved to Pensacola. Um, yeah, really getting people together and showing them, hey, look, there is essentially there's hope outside of what you experience in the military. There's other people that experience the same stuff. There are other people that have gone through the same things, similar things, and really to help people out, you know, become a better version of himself too, and keep memorable moments instead of the thinking like, man, I still wish I was in, or I miss these guys. So it's really we just started officially this year, so we're still pretty new at it. We're planning a couple more events. We try to do one every quarter. We got in with the ice flyers, so we get up a whole bunch of tickets, get donations and stuff, and then buy tickets for from them, do a package deal kind of thing, and then kind of give them out to veterans and first responders and their families and be like, hey, come to this for free, and spend time with your family.
That's
So it's
awesome.
yeah, we that was our big event that we first kind of put our toes in and started doing that. So I think we're gonna try to do that with the Wahoos and stuff like that, and see if we can get some. It's about baseball season. If I think I don't know if it's already started, but we're gonna
There
try
are a
to do
couple
that.
of weeks. Yeah, it started.
Oh, yeah. So I think we're gonna try to do that. Um, doing. I think our next one's gonna be like a kind of a beach bash type thing. We're gonna have like a little, essentially a party, and have some food catered and things like that, just to kind of get people out and about and have a good time since it's starting to get warmer too. So uh, that's really the gist of that, of that cola.
Well, I don't think I said it yet. Thank you for your service, and
My
so
pleasure.
I have so much respect for military men and women, and I have so much respect for you starting this nonprofit, and to help those veterans who don't have the help, and just to create a community. Um, is amazing. Glad I got to. I know we had a quick little talk about it when we met, um, but I love hearing everything that you do with it, and that was just amazing. And how you started it, why you started it, just amazing. I'm a
Yeah,
female. Don't get me. I don't need my eyes sweating right now.
yeah, yeah.
it
I hate it when
it
that
is.
happens.
What'd you say?
Because I hate it when that happens.
Same. It's just when you see people come out of the military that help those, because I mean, a lot of veterans don't have the help. That's why you see. I feel like majority of homeless people are veterans, because they feel like they have no option because like you mentioned a little bit ago, they're used to being with the same group of people and they've been in it for years. So when you come out of civilization, obviously I'm not a veteran, as I stated, so I don't know what it feels like. But if I'm talking to people, because I do my best to help people the best I can, and sitting with these men who are just sitting there because they feel like they have no hope and nowhere to go, it is so devastating, And so what you're doing to help these veterans is amazing, giving them that place to come with their families, just to have these other men to talk to, so they have that, that opportunity is amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's really fulfilling. It is to be able to see like, man, I remember when I had all these, things looming over my head, just, and I didn't know where to go. And to hear that, oh man, that guy can help me out, and being able to hear the stories, be like, hey, I really appreciate you guys doing that. You really helped my family, and kind of like get out of it. Or, when people start counseling, they're like, man, it's, I really thank you guys for doing that. even though we just started, we've had a couple people that have kind of reached out to us after, coming to an event, be like, hey, look, we really appreciate what you're doing. This is really awesome. It really kind of made us restart, and figure this out and kind of help out, helped out my family kind of become a better unit.
Definitely fulfilling, and I know that means a lot to you. And whatever OddSmoker MMA can do to help, I'd love to try to get involved. So I love what you're doing, and even like I said, I'm not a veteran, I still have to give my support how I can.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it'd be fun. Yeah, so I can't really stress the whole mental health thing, man. That's such a big thing to me, because it has helped significantly in my life for sure.
I agreed. I understand. Obviously in a different aspect, but yeah, I went through it, bad. This isn't my interview, but just know I
Right.
understand. I do want to get into, I'm just looking at the time, just real quick. I know you have some big things coming up.
Yes.
So why don't we get into you are running for state representative.
Yes.
Well, wait, did I say that?
Say
Did I
again.
say that? Well, I said it right. State representative.
Yes.
Okay.
And just to be clear, we're done talking about vet cola and all that stuff, and we're moving on to something else. You got to. It's one of those fine lines you got to be careful about, making sure that you don't kind of mix the two. So my last fight was April, and so before that, I had um, went to a veterans event at the VA, and I was pretty unhappy with kind of the way things were handled, as far as like, there's some Vietnam era guys, some Gulf War guys that have some really legit issues, and they finally were able to come out and be like, hey, I need help getting this stuff processed. And a lot of them left with basically, it's an intent to file is what it's called, for their compensation. And essentially that's like, hey, you plan on doing something, congratulations. And that's it. Like, a lot of these guys don't know how to do computers and stuff like that, so they don't know what forms to fill out, they don't know how to go about it. They have to get with their VSOs and kind of deal with that. But it's sometimes difficult to get a hold of those people. So it's like, hey, if you have an event and you're here right now, let's go ahead and try to take care of as much stuff as we possibly can. Well, I feel like it was just kind of like, oh, just the kind of, for me, I saw it as like a numbers thing. Oh, we helped out, I think it was like 124 veterans or whatever. I think it's pretty close to the number that they said. And I'm like, well, I mean, did you really help them out? And I was one of the guys that went up there. I was like, hey, look, I have this stuff going on. Is there a way that we can get stuff filed? And they're like, well, we can give you an intent to file. And I'm like, well, I know how to do that. And, but that's all I got. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm not the only one that having this problem, and then I started talking to other people, and that's kind of what the gist of it was. So I went to WEHR, had opportunity to talk to them about the situation. And well, our county commissioner called me, probably a couple days after it aired, and he's like, hey, I would like for you to be on this disabilities awareness committee for the county, for Escambia County. I was like, all right. I was like, sounds good, let's do it. And I'm like, he wanted a veteran's point of view on it. Well, I go to my first meeting, and they're like, well, we need a chairman. I'm like,
Whatever that could be.
where, what do you mean we need a chairman? Like, I'm like, well, would you take the position of chairman? I'm like, sure, let's do it. So like the first time I show up, I get put in the chairman's position, which this whole stuff is really new to me, and really navigating it is it's been a little tough, but I'm figuring it out. So I came home and told my wife, I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm the chairman of this committee now. She's like, what? I was like, yep. And I was like, man, just kind of half serious, half joking. I was like, wouldn't it be cool if I ran for county commissioner next time? And she goes, yeah, because she's always dealing with my harebrained ideas. And she, like I said, she's so patient, so supportive of all the things that I do. I really couldn't have asked for a better partner for sure. Um, and well, I went to the gym, and of course I was talking to Larry and told him, and he's like, man, you should run for office. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of thinking the same thing. And sure enough, about 2 days later, um, the lady that I had done the other podcast for, she'd contacted me. She said the same thing. Have you ever thought about running for office? And I was like, where are all these people coming from right now? Why is everybody saying this stuff right now? And I was like, you know what? I was like, if this many people think that, obviously there's only two that really said it, but then I got to talking to other people like, bro, you really should, you know? And I'm like, all right. So I actually filled out my paperwork today, and I'm going to turn it in so I can be officially running. But the more I think about it, I'm like, man, this is such a great opportunity to really be able to really be involved in the community and find out what people in, not just veterans, but just in general, the people that live here, like, hey, what do you want to change? Like, I feel like that is such a missed point with some, other politicians. Um, I mean, I've been around some before, been to some of their events, and some are very involved in the community and some are not. Um, it's like I really want to make a big deal about this, and really be in the community and be involved with everything, not just for myself, but to really push what the people here in my district want. They want they want this bill passed for X, Y, and Z. Okay, it's not necessarily what I want. So I'm like, hey, well, let's have a town hall meeting, get together. My plan is to try to do one a quarter. When I get elected, Ron, not going to get that chance.
When, not if.
Yeah, right. When, I'd like to really kind of help out with the community and bring them together and be like, hey, look, what do you want to do? This is what I'm thinking about doing. Are you guys for it or are you not? Write it down. Let me know. Let me know what you think. And try to be readily available, for the community and really try to help Pensacola out in general, in Escambia County, like really put it on the map. I mean, I get it. We're the home of the Blue Angels. So, I want people to come here and think more of like, oh, wow, this place is really nice. Like everything's good to go, and especially in the state of Florida in general. I'm not a native Floridian by any means, but I've, let's see, I moved here 2014. So I've lived here for 11 years now. Mm-hmm. So, and I've literally lived in pretty much the same house the whole time. So I'm like, I'm essentially a Floridian at this point, I'm just stopping this in, you know what I mean? So yeah, I just, my last fight, I felt like it was a good platform to be able to kind of announce it to everybody. It was live on TV. A lot of my friends and family were watching online and everything, and just everybody being there in the audience, and it was actually pretty cool. Even though I lost the fight, um, they still allow me to speak. I talked to Ryan Toole, and he's like, "Man, what happens if you get like knocked out really bad? You still gonna do it?" I was like, "Well, yeah." I was like, "You can't win every fight that you go into.
Yeah.
Sometimes you lose. So the point is I can get back up and I can keep fighting." So and he's like, "All right, I think it'll work." I was like, "I got a plan for it. We're good. We're good." Um, but yeah, like you said, outcome was not in my favor, which it is what it is. It happens. Um, he got a really good knee though, right in the liver. That was a good shot. Um,
That feels like the hurt, that's for sure.
yeah, it did. A little bit of miscommunication between me and the ref when he asked me if I was all right. Um, but
Oh.
being able to announce that to the audience, I think they're like, "Oh wow, like there's no way this guy's gonna run." You know, I don't. And thinking about it, it's like, man, do I really have the credentials for this? I've never been a politician before. Like I've never written a bill before, but surrounding yourself with the people that know how to do that, that's the key to being a good leader.
Okay.
Is knowing when to say, hey, look, I don't really know how to do that, but this guy does, or this gal does. They can do it, you know, and just, hey, this is what my plan is. Let's get this done. Delegating, that type of stuff. Um, Kind of an unknown thing about me. I'm actually, I spent a lot of time in all the way through Cub Scouts. I got my Arrow of Light, um, and then I got my Eagle Scout right before right as I turned 18. Um, so going through that and that whole leadership stuff, being in the military, that leadership, education and everything like that, I really has set me up for the ability to really push it and be a good voice for the community. And that's really why I'm doing it. Is I just I want to be able to speak for the people. I really do. I like that. you know, Putting it that way, it's like I said, it feels really good. Be like, oh man, like people can come to me and be like, hey, I really would like to see this. All right, we'll see what we can do. We'll see if we can push that. You know, so it's going to be pretty cool. I'm really excited about it.
I'm so sorry. I'm so excited for you. And for my viewers, his viewers, guys, if you're in Pensacola, when election time comes around, don't forget about Jason Coffey here. I no, I truly wish you the best in your campaign in the elections. And just know if I was in Pensacola, I'd be voting for you. Unfortunately, I'm a few hundred miles away. So I can't,
All right.
but you have my love and support for Memphis. Um, but I truly, you are inspiration to me, and I'm sure to so many other people. Just your story, from high school to military to what you're doing is just phenomenal. And I'm so glad I was able to have you on the podcast. And I got to learn some about you when I met you at Island Fights. And this is why I wanted the podcast. I wanted to get to know more of you and your past and what you're planning for the future. I think you'd make a great House representative. I mean, you truly seem to care about your people, your community, and you just want to help. Like you said, you want to be that voice for them and make a change and make a difference. And you don't see a lot of that. A lot of politicians don't really, obviously, don't care about the people. They want the best interest for them and the
Right.
government, and the government just fails us because of that. So, truly hope and wish that you do um, become a House representative, because I think you'll make some amazing changes in your community and in the state. So, yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that's the goal.
Hey, if no one's told you, I think you should run for House of Representatives or state
Hey,
representative.
yeah, there you go. I'll do it. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, Jason, thank you again for joining me tonight and coming to talk with me. It has been a pleasure getting to, learn all about this and really deep dive into your military life and MMA and stuff. And if there's nothing else that you want to add, if you can at least, tell us where to find you on socials.
Yeah, I don't have too much of an Instagram thing. I usually do a lot of my stuff on Facebook. So I have my political page. It's just look up Jason Coffey for House Representative District 2. You find me on there. And then I'm on Instagram too as well. So
He
just look up.
doesn't use it. No.
Yeah, yeah. I don't really use it. So I mean, like I said, Facebook's really where I'm at. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you having me on. It's been definitely awesome to get to know you as well, and a pleasure.
Yeah. And make sure everyone please follow his political Facebook, follow him, keep track of everything going on. As soon as he's in the campaign, support him, do whatever to, get him in the office. So I'm going to be go following your page as soon as we get off here.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, you have a great evening, Jason. Again, thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome. Have a good one.
You too.